once that does arrive, it'll be set up in the back and you can... Welcome. Portland, Oregon lies within the traditional homelands of the Multnomah, Oregon City Tumwater, Watlala, and Clackamas Chinooks of the Tualatin Kalapuya peoples who were relocated to the Grand Ronde Reservation under the Kalapuya Act 1855, ratified treaty, also known as the Willamette Valley Treaty 1855. Today, these tribes are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. The Grand Ronde people continue to maintain a connection to their ancestral homelands and maintain their traditional cultural practices. It is my pleasure today to welcome you to the first programming event for Warp Speed exhibition right across the hallway. This exhibition features textiles from the former Museum of Contemporary Craft collection, contrasted and in conversation with commissioned works by 5 contemporary artists based in Portland today, of which Josh Zinn is one. The exhibition runs through October 26th, and we'll have all kinds of programming through October, which is Portland's Textile Month. The first is this one. The next will be Stitchin', which will take place on our October 2nd, First Thursday event. That will be with artist Michael Espinosa. That'll be an activation in our Lemelson area. There is an evening lecture with Carolyn Hazel Drake on October 7th. And there is a panel discussion with myself, Marcia Mack, the curator of the exhibition, along with our 5 artists on October 15th. And finally, on October 18th, we will be hosting a tufting workshop with Melissa Monroe. We hope to see you at all of these events. But now it is my pleasure to introduce Joshua Sin. Joshua Sin is a multidisciplinary artist born in Toronto and based in Portland. His practice is rooted in a lifetime commitment to embodied discipline. As a world champion gymnast, concert pianist, cobbler, and designer, disciplines that have shaped a visual language grounded in precision, repetition, and technique. Joshua is masterful handling materials, transforming reclaimed objects and textiles into sculptures, wearables, installations, and more. In doing so, Sin explores cycles of deconstruction and reconstruction as metaphors for identity, ancestry, and transformation. Josh's work has been featured at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, the Portland Chinatown Museum, Carnation Contemporary, and other galleries across Portland and San Francisco, with publications in Willamette Week, Oregon Arts Watch, and Divide Magazine. Please join me in welcoming Joshua Sin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Marcia, for the nice, wonderful, warm welcome. I needed to kind of steal that artist statement, like bio thing, because it's really well written. But yeah, I'm Josh Sin. I'm an artist and designer living in Portland, Oregon. I've been here for about 7 years, but I'm actually originally from Toronto. So I'm actually going to share a little bit about my origin story, how I became an artist, why I do art, and then I'll talk a little bit more about why I did the giant kitty cat across the street. So me, I'm born and raised in Canada. I'm the youngest of four. My parents are actually originally from Hong Kong. They had a really tough childhood. They basically lived under poverty, and then they basically moved to Canada in the 1980s. And what happens with that is the immigrant story. They worked really hard to raise these 4 kids, and basically everything that they didn't have, they gave to us. That is why they put me into piano, gymnastics. All my siblings pretty much did this. And for me, what Marcia said is really true. Training when I was really, really young in piano and gymnastics is a true thing. It's 4 days a week. I didn't really have summers off. And it's all about repetition, showing up, training, and technique, and doing it again and again and again, and really doing it. So a lot of my work is really based on that. But before I go into my art story, this has been kind of my career. I've always been a designer. I studied industrial design. I've worked as a UX designer, experience design. I helped design the Domino's pizza tracker, if you ever used that. I've done works across design agencies and consultancies. I most recently worked at Nike as a designer in apparel, footwear innovation, as well as retail concepts and opening up stores in Tokyo and Seoul. But for me, the art side has always been something that I do on the side. I was never really fulfilled from a career perspective, and doing art for me has always been something that I've been drawn to, hence why the shoes and the shoemaking. And for me, I actually found art pretty late. Yes, I did study industrial design and went to an art school, but finding art really in the pandemic was really where I started my career. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. If you haven't read this, I highly recommend you to look this up. This is the AB Manifesto by Dunn and Raby, based out in London. And they have a really interesting way of looking at the world through these 2 lenses of A and B. I would compare this in terms of design and art. If you look at design on the left-hand side of A, it's really about innovation, science fictions, creating these things for problem solution and problem solving. So designing things for the world, this is all around creating solutions for the end user. However, I like to see art as the complete opposite side of this. If you think about corporations, it's all about scaling and mass manufacturing. It's all about the end user and what does this mean. But art, on the other hand, is about this bespoke way of thinking. It's really around this social fiction. It's not designing for the end user. It's really designing for the citizen. It's making provocations instead of concept designs, but really think about it from a conceptual standpoint. So I highly recommend you to look at this and analyze your own critique and your own art and your own way of thinking and see if this really makes sense. I'm going to start off with The Awakening, and this is really how I started off in the art world. And this really started off in the pandemic when a lot of us were thinking about, like, what are we doing? Why is the world slowing down? And through this slowing down, I think a lot of us had this reset in mind. And for me, it really started off with this box of fabric. At work, they had this giant closet, which they were getting rid of tons of fabric. And they were just like, hey, come here, take all this fabric and do something with it. So I literally pillaged this closet and took all this dead stock fabric home and started to sew. And me, yes, I did do a lot of cobbling in the past, but becoming a designer and creating my own textile was what I was really interested in doing. This was my first piece that I did, Descendant #1. I wore this on the opening night, but it has a lot of soul to it because it was really my first one. And using this dead stock fabric to create these outlines, I started to imagine what this world could become. I wanted to build a world outside of the pandemic, a form of escapism from the mundane. This, for me, was rethinking what I wanted to do with my life. This was kind of a prompt for a priestess made from deconstructed dress shirts, a form of rebellion of the corporate world, if I might say. I literally took all my dress shirts and deconstructed them and redid them and turned it into this priestess cloak that was really, really neat. The Midnight Farmer, this is, for me, as an industrial designer, you have a lot of strong skill sets in digital. So combining those digitals and physicals was really true, especially at the time of the pandemic when we were all literally on Zoom calls and talking to our families and friends via Zoom. So this merge of the two worlds was really an exciting space for me. The combination of fiber arts and the digital world is also really exciting. It's oftentimes we see something as the fiber arts as something as very static or old, but how can you start creating these moods and feelings and creating this digital world of what they can become? These digital worlds are something that I really wanted to imagine, this future that doesn't exist. And this form of escapism was really kind of key for me in understanding what I wanted to become. I love Alien, and I think these actually talk a lot about my work. It kind of pokes at symmetry and color and translucency, and I always like these different types of images that come together. World building was just a natural extension of my work. I think as a designer and an artist and a world builder, you are someone that likes to create these characters, the depths and the environments of where they come from, the backstories and the characters. What are they wearing? Where are they going? Why are they in this specific area? And I think that's really exciting. I think as a world builder, as an artist, you can create your own world and really stand for what you want and what you want to see in this world. I think it's especially important in today's time to rethink what does this really look like. So during the pandemic, after I have built about 8 descendants, I started to come up with what my dream museum experience would look like. And this here is a digital rendering, of course, but I imagine this space as a little X. And on the walls were these wall prints that I would have, or these digital textiles. And then in the middle would have these descendants staring at each other on giant pedestals with lowly dim light. But I thought this was really interesting for me. And doing these 8 descendants was really a start of where I began this series of descendants. I was really inspired by my parents. They are really into genealogy and tracing family lineage back to 650 BC. And I've done 15 to date descendants, and there's probably still 1,000 more of these ancestors that I have to do. But it is a life goal of that. So the next project I'll talk about is Recology. This was a residency here in Portland, Oregon. I highly suggest all of you apply for this at some point, but this is giving you access to the Northwest Transfer Station and working with trash. This is what the dump looks like. This is a sea of garbage here. The image on the left-hand side is literally probably 1/10 of what this size of this hall really looks like. And I think it's really worth experiencing because you have this overwhelming sense of what this trash station really looks like. There are 3 resident falcons that live in this area that help go and find all the vermins, and there's sometimes trash fires, which is kind of amazing. And then you kind of just see all this endless trash, and I like to call this trash a wave of trash. And what I really learned from this experience was garbage doesn't really go away. This is just a stopping point in the longer journey. Yes, we put our trash in the garbage can, but then it gets taken here, and then it goes 150 miles down to Arlington, and then it basically stays there until it decomposes, which, for example, glass and plastic takes over a century or a millennia to actually decompose. So things don't actually decompose. But from this experience, going into the space, smelling the scent of the spice when I'm there, I came up with these sculptures. Reflecting on my time at the station, I began to imagine a world where tides of trash and refuse are no longer kept at bay, where trash has overwhelmed our planet and spilled beyond the hidden places in landfill, a world where humans have evolved to live a symbiotic relationship with trash, built a culture on repair where luxuries of new and pristine are no longer valued. These were two of the pieces that I've done in addition to a tower, but I just wanted to call out these are Descendants 8, 9, and 10. They are made out of used tarp, essentially. They were probably from the houseless or the unhoused people, and literally taking the roof from roof to robe, essentially. And for me, this was really interesting using this material. I've never used it in the past, but it is both strong, it's both utilitarian, which I find really exciting. It has an interesting patina, especially the blue one. We all know what that looks like. We all seen those tarps before, but as they age, as they have been used, they become softer and they become a lot more malleable. And then adding heat to it actually allows you to harden the material as well. So there's a lot of interesting techniques that you can do with it. I also collected several pots and created these towers. One of them is in front of our house right now, which is really exciting. And I started to imagine where these towers might live in Oregon. The Alver Desert, the Forest Park, the tundra in the wintertime. Again, going back to this world building-esque of what do these mean? What happens when you encounter this in the wild, and what does that look like? Descendant 8, 9, and 10, these are kind of the headshots. And they are, on the left-hand side, they are made out of whippets. I found literally a box of whippets and still have a bunch of them, and I painstakingly attached little tails onto them to make this headpiece. The middle one is made out of pine needles, so in my backyard we have a giant ponderosa pine that sheds needles every single year. And every single year, every fall, I collect them and turn it into something new. So actually, here's a sample of some of the pine needles, but what I really like to do with this is actually kind of corral them and stitch them into these fringe frills, or like pine needle frills in some way. So I'll pass this around and you can take a look at it. The last descendant on the right-hand side is made out of fiber cable, Ethernet cable. And what I realized in Glean, when you're going there 25 times, literally to pick up trash, and picked up over 1,000 pounds of it, is you know what you're attracted to. And there's a reason why you pick these colors or these specific textures. It's probably based on a childhood memory or something that you've grown up with. But I think it's really fascinating to think about, like, when you go look for your material as an artist, when you go to the dump or the Goodwill bins, like, what are the materials that you're finding? What are you picking up? What are you instantly attracted to? Because I think there's a lot of DNA in that, and it's telling you something and the reason why you're picking it up. I was really interested in these old National Geographic paper that I found. I thought these were really exciting, and it kind of plays back into this archive or this world building. We often see National Geographic as a place of referencing previous cultures or cultures of the now, and putting the print onto these pages really meant something different. And it was just a nice nod of finding these old National Geographic prints and being able to do something with them. And again, back to my roots of shoemaking. So these are shoes that I made for each of the characters. I especially like the flip-flops with the grass in it. It looks really silly. The second project I'll talk about is my work at Portland Chinatown here. This was, if you haven't been to Portland Chinatown, I highly recommend you to go there. It is a hidden gem really close to this school. It has a lot of great history in it, and the exhibit is phenomenal. But for here, I learned a lot about the people from the Guangdong region, which is modern-day Hong Kong, Macau, and Guangzhou. And for me, that is actually where my lineage and family comes from. My family is from Hong Kong. I was able to interview Chelsea Rose and Jennifer Fang, who are experts and historians and archaeologists in this field. Textile Hive, you have Caleb here as well. If you go see that, their collection, they have a wonderful collection on the ethnic minorities in China, which I found a lot of inspiration, and one of my pieces is based off of that. I was able to go to Dales and really see the other Chinatowns there as well. That was really exciting. I learned that there was more than just one Chinatown, but there are several. There's probably 20 of them at that time, which was really exciting. I was able to see a lot of these immigration documentations and really learn what it meant to be an artist at that time. If you're interested, the book on the top right, Asian American Art, it's really thick. It's like 600 pages, but it literally captures a majority of the artists from the 1800s until now that are Asian based in the Pacific Northwest and San Francisco. And it was really just fun to read who these people were and what they thought about. What my biggest takeaway from that book were a lot of these artists, yes, they were based on these races, but at the same time, they wanted to be something else. They wanted to be known just for their art, and they wanted to see a lot of different things. These sojourners, they traveled so far into here. They often traveled across the world into a new country and to send money back. So there was a lot of learnings here that were made. And from this, I made these. Continuing the Descendant series, this is Descendant 11, 12, and 13. I wanted to explore the immigrants and workers who quietly shaped and built the foundations of Oregon. They built the downtown infrastructure, the railway system in Oregon, the farming, and especially the canning factories here. However, a lot of these stories and documentations and lives have been lost, erased, or simply don't exist. And I wanted to explore this theme of invisibility. How does it feel to be invisible in the past, but really how does it feel to be invisible now? And oftentimes I feel like that hasn't really entirely changed that much, especially as a Chinese Canadian living in the US. I think a lot of us probably feel this way, like what does it actually feel to be invisible? So I really wanted to explore that theme. Instead of seeing them as laborers, merchants, and prostitutes, these are only the 3 things that you can put on an immigration document for an Asian person at that time. I wanted to see these people as pioneers, innovators, explorers, protectors, guardians, and healers. Descendant 11 and 12 are seen here. These materials that I used here were really fascinating. Again, that theme of invisibility, instead of seeing it as a power struggle, I wanted to see this as a superpower in some ways. So I explored 3 different themes of invisibility. The one on the left-hand side is around cloaking. The middle one is camouflaging using the red, white, and blue Hong Lan Bak Doi, the immigrant bag. And then the third one is around mirroring, which is using all that reflection materials here. The image on the left-hand side shows the woman inspired by the Miao and the Mien and the Miao ethnic minority cultures. It was really interesting to see the collection at Textile Hive because they used a lot of cotton there. And basically what this sleeves does for each of the tribes in these villages is they use a different tartan to help explore what that tribe really looked like. And for me, I decided to make my own tartan here. This is kind of a test prototype that I had on this one, but it basically uses material found in the Portland area. So a lot of this cotton was found from the Goodwill bins. There's a little bit of Pendleton. There's a little bit of Nike in here, which is kind of fun. But I wanted to make my own tartan for what it represented in Portland. The character on the far left, the silver one, I found that material from the Glean residency, and it is this silver material that is a reflective tarp. And what was happening at this time in 2023, we had those large forest fires, and I was reading about the prison workers in Southern Oregon who were being used to essentially put these fires out and what that story might have looked like. I think those materials are really interesting to look at reflectivity and how do you reflect heat and protection, and I thought it was an interesting way to kind of look at that mentality. In the second room of Portland Chinatown, I created the second room using technology to explore what does invisibility look like. A lot of our history has been erased and destroyed or simply just doesn't exist, or it is through a biased view of a white immigration officer. So I wanted to use AI mid-journey to recreate this erased history and really question the ethics and the morals and the philosophical dilemma of using AI to recreate history. Yes, or the history doesn't exist, but however, what are the ethics around it? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How can we start using that? What's wrong with this image? How does AI actually interpret these histories? Are these real people? Are these not? What are the biases that they start providing? So this is an image of what a canning factory might have looked like in Astoria. There's not that many historical images to help represent this, but this gives you a little glimpse into what that world might have looked like. What are some of the stereotypes of using AI when you start looking at this way? Why does AI keep spitting out these beautiful Asian models? What does downtown Chinatown might have looked like way back then? So one really interesting thing that I learned was Chinatown was actually in the main area of what downtown is today. So for example, where the Nordstrom area, that was actually the main Chinatown, and then they were pushed out once it became a really successful area of what that looked like. I was exploring what the railroad workers might have looked like. A lot of them are erased and simply don't exist, especially Tanner Creek. And then this last photo was really interesting. When the railroad was complete, there was an image taken at that time, and basically that photo was a historical photo because it literally had all the white people in them, but no Asian people. And I wanted to recreate what that moment might have looked like to showcase all those workers who were actually there. This photo is actually kind of scary because it actually starts to poke out the issues of some of what AI is doing. You can kind of see the faces and it looks like it's really been peeled off or like pasted on top of a body. Is that a white body on top of an Asian face? It actually pokes out a lot of questions, but I think it's interesting to think about, yes, how do we help celebrate and rewrite some of these histories that are wrong or simply don't exist, but at the same time really poke at the ethics and the moral issues around AI. The next chapter here, I'll talk about the show at Just Playing Around. This was at the Jordan Schnitzer earlier this year. This was at PSU, and this is an intersection around play and art. I did 3 monuments for this show, so as you walk into that museum, you're greeted by these 9-foot-tall monuments. These are all inspired by childhood toys and what you leave behind when you grow up, and how do you commemorate those childhood toys. This really was inspired by a trip going to the Goodwill bins, and I found this little teddy bear with the name on it, Liam. And I started to question with this little teddy bear, like, what happened to Liam? Why did he leave this teddy bear away? Did he grow up? Did he grow out of it? Like, he probably loved this toy at some part, but it really made me question what happens when we lose that childhood part of us. So it really started to go. When I started out this project, I made these 3 stuffed animals for my nieces and nephew, and really it was based off of their personalities, and I wanted to really really understand who they were from a personality standpoint and start treating them and putting them from a form perspective. This led to sketches, which I like to do. Oftentimes it's just doodling. I find doodling very relaxing and it helps get ideas out. And then from there, it led to more sketches. Really wanted to explore how this became a huggable moment for these students. And then what I was really fascinated in is always just the making part. For me, making makes the most sense when I do art. I think a lot better with my hands instead of actually with my head. I think a lot of the times we are stuck in our head a lot. And with some of the best learnings that I have learned is just keep going, keep trying, and see what happens. Each toy has been deconstructed and rebuilt, sewed by hand. All the materials are from the Goodwill bins. You can kind of see my car super full with stuffed animals. But yeah, this question of that Liam teddy bear, what do you leave behind and what happens is really true. One of the memories that I have growing up was I used to love dancing essentially as a kid, probably when I was 4 or 5 years old. And there's a sort of innocence to it. Like I just loved performing, I loved dancing. And then all of a sudden that memory just disappeared. That joy for dancing disappeared. There was almost like a shame attached to it, which became a burden, and I didn't like the eyes on me or having that attention. And I often think about, what is that childhood thing that you have lost? So this exploration of play was really understanding, I don't know, a collaboration from my past self, my younger self, and really celebrating and commemorating and creating these monuments to those past selves. The third monument that I created was around collecting. If the first two were around those monuments here, this was a tower collected with over 100 Beanie Babies put into glass boxes, and really poking at this question of, what is our obsession with putting things of value into boxes? You kind of see this with shoes, you kind of see those Pokemon cards and Beanie Babies and Pogs, and what is our obsession with these collections that we have? Why do we put things in box? And for me, it was really interesting to build this tower because it reminds me of an architectural tower, but at the same time, everyone is kind of isolated and they can't really have fun, so it kind of pokes at the fun of why this even exists. So these are the 3 towers that I did. Each kind of look at a different lens of play, but also a different generation of play. On the right-hand side, you have the 80s and 90s and those toys collected then. On the left-hand side, you have the ultra kawaii aesthetic, super cute. And then on the middle, you have the early 2000s and their Beanie Babies. As you go down into the basement of the JSMA, I also had these 3 pieces here, and these were from a play that I did earlier that year in 2024 at Shaking the Tree Theater called Satire. Satire is about a tech CEO who creates an AI life coach that sends him on an enlightenment journey. He follows these strict regimented schedules to tell him to start his own fashion line, something that's really out of his box. And as this performer is on stage, he's having these conversations with AI, literally talking to the ether, kind of like God. And then he's also just having these questions of what this is. And the CEO started this fashion line called Satire. This is really inspired by the Chinese symbol, the double happiness symbol, Song. And this symbol is really interesting because you literally use it in weddings when 2 people come together. It's like the double happiness of what it becomes. And I wanted to use that in kind of a silly, mocking way of consumerism. When you buy something, you have this buyer's high. And what is a better symbol to represent this buyer's high but a double happiness symbol? If you buy this, you'll be happy, double happy. And what was interesting about this project was I treated it like a corporation. I was starting a new fashion brand about a tech CEO, and I wrote a mission and a vision for what this looked like. So this is actually one of the slides that came from the mission and vision. And this is really silly, but I wanted to poke fun at how corporate people talk. We envision a utopia with limitless empathy, relentless innovation, and unwavering sustainability guides every soul towards transcendence. Something that is both like ethereal and you're just like, WTF, what does this actually mean? But also kind of poking fun at just what's happening within the fashion industry, corporate America and tech billionaires. I always wanted to do a fashion show, but never had a right reason to do a fashion show. I think fashion shows are really silly because they kind of poke fun at, like, you need to be current and in the right zone, and it's all about celebrities and influencers. But I decided to do an anti-fashion fashion show. So the journey of Satire really starts out like this. It is both like a keynote speak given by a CEO and a tech star, and then it's intermixed with different flavors of fashion show. So you have this artist who is there, who's given this fashion show, and she's literally poking fun at this tech CEO. And she does this fashion line. There's 3 different chapters to it. The first one is literally poking at brands as religion. So a lot of the double happiness logos are expanded really, really large to really poke fun at logos and how corporations use that. The second one is around the exploitation of culture and how we steal heritage and apply it into our clothing. And then the third chapter is called The Rebellion, which are the pieces in the basement. And that is really when the CEO has a meltdown and then these spirits come down to help him go into it. The play was pretty nuts because there was advertisements, there was a fashion show, there was like keynote speeches, and it ended up with a liquidation sale, which kind of pokes fun at the current industry where all the stores are literally closing right now. But it was really fun. Here are a couple of scenes from the stage production, the play, and then we actually recorded a couple of nights of these shows and then created a short film which was in that museum. But these three pieces that you see at the museum are that third chapter, the rebellion. And these are three spirits, the imagination, pleasure, joy, and innocence. They come down and descend upon the CEO and remind him of his childhood and what he has lost. Again, all of these are made from trash. You can kind of see a little bit of the Pendleton, the exploitation of culture brought into here. Again, some of the pine needles that I've collected, and a lot of fringe. Okay, final chapter. So I'm going to talk about Soft Guardian, or like our nickname for this when she was at home was actually Meow Meow. So I'll talk about Soft Guardian a little bit more. So if you don't know where the Chinese line comes from, it's actually based off the story about the Nian beast who comes down during the winter month. It's oftentimes hungry and it feeds on the village people, children, and crop around the New Year time. And then the Nian beast it's kind of a chameleon in some ways. It has the face of a lion, body of a dragon, tusk of an elephant, claw of a tiger, and teeth of a wolf. And what happened were the people actually discovered that the fireworks blinded the Nian beast. The noise actually scared it away. And that is why for Chinese New Year, we have the red lanterns and the signage around the door frames, because it helps protect and wards off the beast. That same ferociousness was met with a lion dance with a drum beat to scare it off away. So that was the introduction of the lion and how it came to China. But doing my research, the lion actually didn't really exist in China. It actually came from India. This was a sculpture that I found from 250 BCE, and it's really rooted in Buddhism. And what happened was, through the Silk Road, the people from Central Asia, Samarkand, Yatsi, Persia, Afghanistan were able to bring a lion in. They traveled probably over 100 miles across land into China and then introduced it to them. And this is an image of what the Samarkand people presented the lion to the Chinese emperor. And it was really interesting to look at the lineage of how this changed. I created this slide to really showcase the different lions and how they approach through time. If you look at the first three on the left-hand side, you can kind of see the lion was really soft. And this is because they had never really seen a lion. But what happened in the Tang Dynasty is when they actually were able to see a real lion, the imagery of the lion actually started to change. It became a little bit more ferocious, the eyes a little bit more elongated, the mouth open, with baring teeth. And I like to say current day, modern time lion, if you watch K-pop Demon Hunter, the lion from that, we're all about cutesiness. Lion dance can be seen across Asia. It's not specifically to China, but it's also seen in Japan, Indonesia, Korea, and Tibet. And throughout time, what was really interesting in researching these Chinese lions were the artist changed it based off of what was happening at that context of time. For example, when it was wartime, they look more fearful. When there was no wartime, they had larger, cuter eyes, and each master really does them differently. Similar to my training in shoemaking, each master does it really differently. And there was never really one way of doing it, and that really opened up my freedom in terms of what I wanted to interpret for this lion. I wanted to interpret that it is currently a crazy time out there right now, and I wanted to really create something that pokes at the dying masculinity culture, something that is still gripping us very tightly, but we wanted to create this soft guardian using tulle, which is a very feminine material, often seen on weddings and prom dresses, and I wanted to combine this masculine and feminine symbolism into this protector. These are some of my early prototypes. I actually originally wanted to go more of this seed pod zone. These are materials that I've never worked with before, and it was really fascinating to learn how to master them and really figure out like what is the technique that I really wanted to do. My original proposal for this exhibit was actually creating a spaceship out of tulle and rattan, but I thought the soft guardian, the Chinese lion, was more representation of what we needed in this moment. Again, the materials that I used are bamboo, rattan, and tulle. The tulle, something that's soft and fluffy and delicate, and then the bamboo is something seen as strength, imagination, and power. And how do you combine all of that together? I think it was important to mention that doing this for the first time took a lot of work. And I think I told this to Marcia early on. I was like, I'm going to do something like push myself and try something absolutely new. And like to be kind of unsafe and do that is hard, but I think it was actually kind of fun just playing with new materials and figuring out how would you actually execute this. On the floor, you have the sacred geometry and yantras, and this really helps invite people in to be interactive. So when you are at the museum here, you can actually go under the soft garden, the meow meow, and actually embody the characters of what that Chinese lion is. I think for us right now, it's about being strong. It's about being empowered to do what you want to do. So that is why I hung it onto the ceiling and made it these yantra texts to actually invite you in to embody the lion. Since this was my first time, I watched a lot of YouTube and Instagram videos on how to actually make this lion head. Shout out to this person, Tron, who gives you step-by-step guides of it. It was really difficult to do it. I probably watched like bits and snippets of these pieces like 50 times just to be like, this is how I do it. And then at some point, probably 3/4 of the way through the project, I was probably confident enough to actually start going my own route and making my own decisions. But it's really scary, but I would highly recommend you to just try it and see what happens, because the worst thing that could happen is probably the meow meow falls down and it doesn't work, but I think it's okay. So yeah, that's really a wrap up on my presentation. I would say the final thing that I would say to all of you before questions are asked is be courageous, be brave, attempt and use new materials, new techniques, and really explore, because art is all about exploring, and it's not necessarily about the final results or the exhibition, but it's about showing up. It's about doing a daily practice and actually taking the time to be alone and think and work with your hands, because that is the best thing that you can do for you. It really soothes you down. It turns you into a better human being that understands what is going on into the world. And I really hope you enjoy the meow meow and get some meditation time under it in the next couple of months. So thank you.
Okay, we can take questions if anyone has one. I can bring the mic over to you. Who's got a question? Okay.
Thank you. Hi, this is my first impression of you. I just moved here. I really like your work, and your 3D sculptures are very impressive as a primarily 2D artist. I have the impression of you that you really care about sustainability and also accurately representing East Asian culture. And I wanted to ask how that conflicts with a lot of the AI images I saw in your presentation, particularly the 2D AI images that were generated representing the people bringing the lion in the cages. As in my opinion, I feel as if when AI is used to represent images that could be made by like perhaps a 2D artist with more research that has like actual experiences and has done research on that like era, my worry is that, for example, that image with the lion isn't actually an accurate image because AI is just guessing, whereas an actual artist would be able to actually research what era it was in. And also, as you know, the environmental impact of AI images and how much energy it takes to generate them. I did think it was very interesting about examining the stereotypes it uses, but when using it to display your own art or using it as examples, I wonder how that relates to your vision, if that makes sense.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Great questions. Thank you for asking those. I completely agree. I think we are in an interesting time with AI right now. Yes, it uses a lot of energy. I like to use AI as a collaborator to help push my ideas further and faster, which is totally how I like to use it. To your earlier point about the line of the representation of that, I agree. There's probably complications with that and issues around that. I think it probably needs a lot more research to actually show what is accurate about it. For me, why I like using AI is because you're able to look at things differently. I think it's more of a exploring tool that allows you to expand your thought and to do something a lot quicker. For example, in my work stream, I usually do tons of sketches, and I used to actually have to do a lot of storyboarding and that sketching, but now using AI, I'm able to actually storyboard a lot faster. So that is the reason why I like to use it. So I think, yes, the representation of it is tough, and we need to think about that a little bit more and do a lot more research to really do that well. And then your second point around, yeah, what was your second question again?
I believe that, I'm pretty loud. About all AI art is generated off of the images funneled into it, everything off the internet. Most AI, like very big AI generating images, like companies use copyrighted designs and art made by a lot of illustrators that did not consent to it. Personally, I dislike the use of AI when it's used as something more than a tool. Like using it in the final product, I think has some ethical issues, but I do understand using AI for like very specific functions and to speed up the process. I'm just not sure if I'm seeing that use here. If like maybe it is possibly overused, like you could perhaps collaborate with another artist in order to create these the 2D images or the storyboards that you would like. And if I'm correct, was the image about the sculptures, like the kid playing with the sculptures, the toy ones, was that one also AI generated?
No, that one was rendered.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't quite sure.
Did you have a question? Yes, I did. Remind me where the trash site is where artists can collect trash to make art.
Yeah, the Northwest Transfer Station. You have to actually, if you go through Reclaim, actually talk to these ladies right next to you because they work there. But there's a couple great spots. I would recommend Reclaim up in North Portland. They have a great spot with tons of materials. There's also Scrap in Southeast. I actually don't think you get access to the transfer station unless you have training on it. But look up the Gleaned Residency, because if you get into the Gleaned Residency, then you have access to the dump for like 6 months. And I would highly recommend all of you to apply into that.
And applications are being accepted right now, right? For another month about. Yes. Google Glean. We have some flyers on our front table as well, like as you're exiting out the front. All right, are there any other questions for today? No? Okay, well, Josh, thank you so much.